Wednesday, April the 6th, you should be reading the end of Joshua today. Joshua chapter 22, 23, and 24. As well as reading Psalm 116 and Luke chapter 19. I hope that you've been enjoying this journey through the Old Testament, through the Psalms every day, and as well as learning through the New Testament as you're leading the New Testament up to the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. In the Old Testament passage today, the book of Joshua is wrapping up this history in Israel's time period through the journey from Moses in the Promised Land to we have now conquered all of Israel, right? They have conquered the eastern portion of Israel, but now they've conquered the western portion of Israel. They've conquered all the areas to the west of the Jordan River, like Jericho and what would be Jerusalem and all these other cities, and they're starting to settle back down into the land God has promised them. They've worked for it, they've listened to God, and now He is blessing them. And at Joshua chapter 24, what happens is Joshua realizes he's towards the end of his life. His time of leading the Israelites is coming to an end. And he does something that he learned from Moses. He gathers all the Israelite leaders together in a town called Shechem. It was their lead city at that time. He gathers them all together and he reminds them of their covenant with God. And remember, a covenant is a contract between two people. You do this and I will do this. And if either party ends the covenant, there were consequences to that. And we've learned throughout history that God is always faithful in keeping His covenant promise. His people, not so much. They've forgotten so many times the ways of God. They had to wander the desert for 40 years before they even got to the book of Joshua because they'd forgotten the ways of God. Joshua doesn't want them to forget. He doesn't want them to miss out as he dies. He doesn't want them to miss out on the promises to come of God. So he gathers the leaders together and he spends some time with them, reminding them of their promises to God, but God's promises to them as well, reminding them of God leading them out of Egypt, that He went before them, that He did a mighty work in the new land that is now theirs, and that they need to serve the Lord with everything they have or things won't go well. That's a key phrase. Serve the Lord with everything you have or things won't go well. And the reason is, well, we're going to find out over the next few days together through the book of Judges. But we're not there yet. Joshua chapter 24. It says this, verse 29. After Joshua had gathered all the people together, after he said these things, Joshua the son of Nun, he was the servant of the Lord. What a cool title to have. I hope at the end of my life, that when I gather with people and I remind them of the things of God and I bless them and tell them to live for God faithfully, after I leave this place, I hope that people say of me, I'm a servant of the Lord. After this Joshua, the servant of the Lord, he died at the age of 110. And they buried him in the land of his inheritance at Timnath Serah in the hill country of Ephraim, north of Mount Gash. Israel served the Lord. This is a cool thing for him as a leader, Joshua. Israel served the Lord throughout the lifetime of Joshua and the elders who outlived him and who had experienced everything the Lord had done for Israel. What a cool leadership thing. God says you're a servant of the Lord, but also they note to Joshua that during Joshua's reign as their leader, as the one leading them into the promised land, he was so pursuant of the heart of God that the people were obedient to God. They followed him faithfully. And then when he died, because he reminded them of the promises, that generation who had followed with him led well as well. What a legacy. What a legacy of faithfulness. Striving to serve the Lord with everything that you have, and making sure that the people around you also do that as well. My challenge for you, because Judges is going to be frustrating. In the book of Judges, Joshua ends on a high note. You're going to start Judges, and you're going to see that they enter in this cycle of what's called apostasy, that they serve God really well for a while, then they forget to serve God. And because they forget to serve God and they run to their own things, there's consequences. They break the covenant and they end up enslaved by another people. And they cry out to God for a leader who he sends them to rescue them. They serve him well. And then they forget God again. It's this cycle of apostasy. Claiming God and then rejecting God. Claiming God and rejecting God. But we're not there yet. At the end of Joshua's life, it was well done, good and faithful servant. It was a guy who led faithfully, and he led the people around him faithfully, and they led the people faithfully after he was gone. But not too far after that, a few generations later, they forgot it all because they didn't keep passing it along. Church, our job is to pass it along. From generation to generation, being faithful with what we have so we can serve our God well, so he can look at all of us and say, well done, good and faithful servant. I'm excited for us to jump into the book of Judges tomorrow with Rebecca. Until I see you again, you are sent.